is Janet with Living Room Talks. I have Kysha with me from the University of Miami. Kysha, how are you today?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good. So first question to you. I watched your Cane Talk, which is a series that University of Miami had. Tell me a little bit about it.
So a Cane Talk is very similar to a TED Talk, but it was done at the University of Miami. And the Cane Talk was regarding questions or what other healthcare providers can take from athletic training. So I really tried to focus on how, as an athletic trainer, we get to develop more relationships with our patients, or we know our patients a little bit better, depending on what setting we're in. But there's a lot that other healthcare professionals could learn from athletic trainers, as far as knowing when something doesn't look right, or when an athlete may be off, and how that kind of led to me incorporating 3 questions into my medical history to make sure I give patients the opportunity to get their values and needs addressed. So yeah, that was the gist of the Cane Talk.
How did your peers, how did they receive that information?
I was pleasantly surprised that it was well received. The hard part was, I knew that I wanted it to be related to other healthcare providers, but I also wanted to empower patients to make sure that if their healthcare providers weren't asking those questions, that they felt empowered to kind of share more with their healthcare providers. So I didn't know how it was going to be received, and it seemed to be really well received, and I got a lot of positive feedback. So I'm happy that it started or sparked some conversations, and some people are saying they're using those questions now. So it felt like the hard work of memorizing the speech or memorizing the talk was well worth it, for sure.
So this is something I always wonder for seasoned professors and speakers. Do you still get nervous?
Absolutely, every single time. And I think and I'm trying to figure out, like, why do I still get nervous? And I think it's because I care and I want it to go well. And I think some of that, I just try to take that nervous energy and turn it into good energy to get the message across. But absolutely, I will say the more prepared I am, the less nervous I feel. I think that's true for most. But definitely, I still get nervous, especially when it's important and it matters.
So what do you do to combat those nerves, other than preparation?
I was going to say, other than preparation, I think really looking at the audience and thinking of them as my class. And I think if I could kind of stop and say, okay, these aren't people I just met, or this isn't a conference, but let me approach this as if it's my class. And then I think the natural kind of teacher instincts go into effect, and it kind of makes me relax a little bit. And I just kind of try to look at it that way.
So a lot of stuff is going on in the world right now. What's your current feelings and emotional state with everything that's going on?
Wow, how do I answer that?
It's a loaded question, right? Where do you start?
It is. I would say busy, but I guess my biggest emotional state would be a little tired, a little exhausted. I think it's been a long year, and it's been a lot of things going on. I would say, so if I had to sum it up, I say exhausted but hopeful. So yeah, it's been a heavy year, especially for everyone, especially for people of color. And then you add the dimensions of healthcare and being a teacher, and even being a parent and explaining this to kids. And then you add doing cultural competency and diversity work on top of it. It's a lot.
So you're the EDAC chair. How was this past year for you from the previous years?
It was definitely the busiest year, and I think it was a good thing. Again, like I said, I used exhausted, but I was excited that people wanted more information and people wanted to collaborate, and the fact that people were reaching out meant that people who normally didn't prioritize maybe some of the topics or some of the things EDAC does were trying to make an effort to do that. And so it was all coming from great places. It's definitely a lot. And I think EDAC did a really good job of reaching out and getting help to be able to meet all those requests and to inform our membership about important issues. But it definitely was one of the busiest times. But I would have been, if it wasn't our busiest year, I'd be more concerned than I am about it being a busy year.
What was surprising through all this about the membership? Asking you questions or reaching out? What has been surprising to you?
One, it's been surprising that so many people want more information, but I think one of the biggest things that was a little frustrating was that people were asking questions and asking for stuff that EDAC has done before. And so I guess that was the biggest thing. You assume because you do stuff that people know it exists, whether that's a website or a resource or a program. So we're getting a lot of suggestions like EDAC should do this and can EDAC do that? And I'm like, well, we've been living this for years and we've been doing this. So that was really surprising because I think also we take for granted and we think that if we put it on social media, that means that all of membership knows, and they don't. And so I think it forced EDAC to realize that we have to find ways to get information out to everyone and make things more available so people know it's there. But yeah, that was really surprising that some people didn't know some of the things that EDAC had been doing for a long time.
On the topic of diversity, especially in athletic training, what has been exciting and what has been frustrating for you as a clinician and now as a professor?
I would say as a professor, the amount of resources and the amount of people willing to have these conversations have been super exciting. The amount of books for allies and for students and for people who want more information, all of those things have been made more accessible. Frustrating is the part where people still don't get why diversity matters and why it's important. And I have those conversations a lot, and people don't see the value in it. Or when someone says that all you do is talk about diversity, or can't we just all be Americans, or can't we all just be athletic trainers, and kind of dismissing people's experience. So I think some of those conversations have been some of the best conversations I've had as well, when you could kind of shed light and let people know why it matters and why we're talking about it. But it gets frustrating as well when you have those conversations repeatedly.
So what do you say to them? Because I struggle with that all the time. I'm the Georgia EDAC chair, and people have asked, like, why do we need this committee? Why do we need this? What do you say to them?
Well, I say it depends on the exact topic. I say when you talk about diversity in general, different things matter to different people, right? We all have different values. So I think you have to know your audience and show them why it matters to them. Because to say we need to talk about it because it's the right thing to do and use the moral argument just doesn't work for everyone. And so I think you have to let people know all the reasons why diversity is important. You know, we know that when you have diverse people around the table, you make better decisions. If you could tie that to a financial component and say it's going to make you more successful, it's going to make your research better, it's going to make your company better, it's going to make your organization more innovative. And if you could tie it to things that directly relate to them, then it opens the door to have a deeper conversation about why you should also care because of the moral reason. But I think you have to make the intellectual argument, you have to make the success argument, all the different things that diversity does to improve things. You have to let people know that. And I also think sharing your personal experiences, people don't or people haven't had an experience where lack of diversity or a lack of inclusion directly affected them, they don't get it. So I think the more that you can share personal stories helps for people to realize, like, wow, I didn't recognize that, or I didn't realize that.
Have you had a chance to, I know we've all had a chance to kind of sit back and reflect on our own thoughts and how we view things. Have you thought about any implicit biases you've had to deal with that you didn't realize before?
Absolutely. What's really funny is I took a Harvard implicit bias test, or the name slightly changed now, but it actually told me I had a bias toward older people. And I was like, well, really? And then I stopped and thought about it. I'm like, well, I'm a college professor. I live on campus, I work on campus, and I live with a 15-year-old. And I'm like, oh, it makes sense. And it was like an experience factor. But I also recognize there's just different things that when you don't know something, you have these biases or these mindsets based on not real facts, but things that you maybe see on TV or that you think you know, but you really don't know. So I think I always try to recognize that I'm not perfect. And if I'm in a situation where maybe I made an assumption about someone, really stopping to think like, why did I say that? Why did I think that? And what led me to go down that route? I think it's important to always stop and kind of self-check yourself. So I know there's an age implicit bias I have. And I also know that I feel really comfortable talking about diversity and race, but diversity is so many different things. And because it affects me as it relates to race and gender, and those are the areas where I felt like I've been discriminated against, it's the ones that are most important to me, doesn't mean that they're the most important to others. So really stopping to recognize that diversity means a lot more than race and ethnicity has been one area that I've tried to make sure that I self-correct.
So you are the first African-American female that was an athletic trainer at University of Miami. Yeah. Probably along the way you experienced some discrimination. Can you say a little bit on that?
Yeah, I think it continues to happen. And I probably experienced it more. Well, this is another thing. It's really hard because when I started here at the University of Miami, not only was I the first African American, I was very young. I came here for an internship right out of undergrad, and some of the seniors on some of the teams were older than I was. So when certain things happened, it was really hard to recognize, like, did that just happen because I'm a female, because I'm Black, or because I'm young? And it's really kind of hard to tease those things out. And I still feel like that sometimes, like, why did that person feel that way? And I think more recently, I've even experienced it as a faculty member where someone assumes that I'm a student, or assumes that I'm not a professor, or I've had those challenges a lot. And I think one of the biggest things that I've done to overcome it is try to have conversations with people, try to figure out where it was coming from, and not to jump to conclusions that they were automatically being racist or discriminating, and trying to figure out what was going on. But yeah, I think I've experienced it, and it's really hard sometimes to figure out where it's coming from. I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, totally. So kind of switching gears a little bit, you're in a position of hiring and admitting students. What kind of characteristics are you looking for?
Oh, good question. I think someone who's really passionate for athletic training, someone who really enjoys the profession. But I think as far as characteristics, you want someone with really good work ethic. I think you want someone with self-confidence, and not self-confidence that they think they know it all, but self-confidence that they're willing to learn, or they feel like if you teach me, I'll be able to do it. So I think self-confidence, work ethic is really, really important, but you have to have a passion for what you do. I think the people who have been most successful in my organization, or who I've worked with, are people who are go-getters, and also intellectual curiosity. Someone who's not okay with just learning and being here, but they're always trying to grow, and always trying to learn, and always trying to get better.
And when you think of the best student you've had, what jumps to mind? What stands out about them that makes them one of your best students?
They weren't okay with average. They weren't okay with just getting the job done. They weren't okay with being mediocre. They always wanted to be the best, or whether it was an assignment or a project or an event, they always wanted to make it better and not just kind of go through the motion. So I think it's related to work ethic. I think it's related to passion and enthusiasm, and always wanting to be better. So I've had a couple of those students that you remember, and a couple of professionals who I still am in contact with today. And I think the biggest thing, they push me to be better, because they don't settle for just one answer. They want more. They want more information. So yeah.
So the transition to academia, what was that process like, and what was the thinking process like, making the transition from clinician to academia?
Yeah, I really love athletic training. I don't know if you can find too many people who love athletic training more than I do. So making a change to academia was an interesting one, but I had been in athletics for about 9 years and I was working on my PhD and I knew I wanted to teach and I figured that out in the athletic training facility because I realized what I liked the most is when an athlete was really empowered and informed with understanding their injury or illness. And that brought me a lot of satisfaction. And to the point where my coworkers were like, will you stop teaching them about anatomy and stop teaching them about these injuries? Because they were starting to ask questions and they were starting to become informed. But it led to better buy-in. They were more willing to stay in their booth or to come to rehab because they understood the importance of it. And at the same time, we had an athletic training internship route and not a program. So there was an opportunity to start an accredited program. And that was really interesting to me. So I made the decision to go into academia so that I could teach more and I could help get the athletic training program at the university started. So yeah, it was a hard decision, but it didn't feel like I was leaving athletic training because I was teaching it every day and still really, really involved.
So right before we actually started recording, I was running around back and forth because working in a clinic right now during the spring is insane. So what do you miss most about being a clinician?
I miss seeing people return to the field, the court, the pool, whatever. And that feeling like they did it and I was along for that journey. So I miss that a lot. And along with that, game day. I think it's nothing better than game day, no matter what, whether it was soccer, basketball, tennis, whatever. Game day just is exciting. And it's exciting to see people do what they love to do and what they enjoy doing. So yeah, those are the things I miss the most.
Looking at the profession of athletic training the next couple of years with the change to a master's program, what issues do you think our profession's going to face?
Great question. I think originally when it was being proposed, the first thing I went to was diversity, right? Because that's how my mind is at. And I was really worried that as we get less programs and as we move to the master's level of degrees, that would affect HBCUs, historically Black colleges and universities, and the socioeconomic impact on those who couldn't maybe afford or think they could afford graduate school, and will that impact our demographics and diversity demographics? And but I also think with that, I don't know if you asked this, but on the flip side of that, there's some potential opportunities there as well. So I was thinking there were a ton of athletes when I worked as an athletic trainer who wanted to get involved in athletic training but couldn't because their schedules were so rigorous already. And so the master's level presents an opportunity for us to recruit athletes, and who might make the best athletic trainers and people who understand and get it. And so I think that's an opportunity. I think looking at opportunities for veterans and non-traditional students in athletic training have opened up a lot. So I think I was worried the most about diversity, and I'm still, EDAC is still watching that and looking and seeing if we could get data to watch those trends. I do think we're going to have to recruit a lot differently and start exposing people to profession in high school or in colleges that don't have athletic training programs a little differently. But that's probably my biggest concern. Other than that, I think it's great for the profession as far as the knowledge and the education we have and we need. So, yeah.
So tell everyone a little bit about your other passion, your cards. Because I love them. I think they're the best thing ever.
Oh, thank you. One of the things that I do when I'm not doing athletic training related things is I like to do crafts. I like cards, but I have a card business, and it started because my niece, who lives with me now, she was in Boston at the time. I actually got sick, and it was Thanksgiving time, and I was starting to look at Christmas cards and Christmas gifts, and I couldn't find a a Christmas card with a black Santa Claus, or any cards that kind of look like my family or like my niece. And so I actually found a piece of artwork, and I purchased the artwork and I made my own card for her. And then I started to think, well, if I have that problem, other people are probably thinking the same thing. And so while I had bronchitis and I wasn't allowed to get out of bed, I started a business and I started making my own greeting cards. And I wanted people to feel like they could send a card to someone and they had, images that looked like them, that were beautiful, that made them feel good about themselves, who they are. So, yeah.
My favorite one is that superhero one.
Oh, thank you.
I'm a nerd like that, so.
Thank you. And the plan is to expand as well. So hopefully, as it relates to religion and ethnicities, that I'm able to expand the card line in all my free time. That's what I'm going to do.
All right, last question, and probably my favorite question. Tell me about an embarrassing situation you've had as an athletic trainer, and what did you learn from it?
Wow. I mean, there's the silly ones. One's pretty silly. I'll save that one for last. Probably the biggest, the serious one is, I think I make mistakes quite often, assuming that people think and learn like I learn. I realized that really early as a preceptor. Is when I hear stuff, I remember it, and it's just the way it is. And I can hear something and remember it and spit it back out. And I used to, be so happy to teach and be on the sidelines teaching students. And the next day I would come back and quiz them and they wouldn't know. And I'd be like, what do you mean you didn't know? I told you yesterday. And then I was like, well, it took a minute for it to click to say, well, not everyone can hear something and repeat it back like I do. And I think that's repeated itself in different situations where I've made assumptions that people learn like I learn or do work the same way that I do work. And it doesn't mean that it's better or worse, it's just different. And so I think I've been in weird situations where I've assumed people are going to produce a product that in my mind they should have produced a certain way and they didn't. The funny one is it was around Halloween time. I had a thing of candy on my desk in the athletic training facility. Those little drums. What are those? The
Dum-dums?
Yeah, dum-dums. I had a dum-dum and I was just finishing lunch, and a football player who's pretty famous came in and said, will you tape me? And I was like, I'm at lunch and all the football athletic trainers are gone. And I'm like, okay. And I went out with the dum-dum in my mouth and I'm taping his ankle and we're talking. And before I knew it, a big thing of drool landed on his big toe. And we just started both busting out laughing together. And it taught me to follow my own rules and don't eat in the athletic training facility.
There's a reason why we have those rules.
But that's the most embarrassing athletic training story. So yeah, big thing of drool landed on this really famous football player's big toe.
That's gonna go up there on my list. All right, Kysha, next couple minutes for you. Your closing statements.
I just want to say that my term with EDAC, being the chair, is coming to an end really soon, and it has been fantastic work. I also just want to let people know that the NATA, EDACs, all of the strategic partners need everyone out there to help in any way that they can. Not everyone wants to be a chair, not everyone wants to be a committee member, but there's something out there that everyone can do to make this profession better. I think it's the greatest profession, but if you look at all of our organizations, they're composed of us. So we are EDAC, we are the NATA, we are all of these organizations, and we need people to let their voices be heard. So I appreciate you for doing this, and I think this is how you're doing your part, and I love it.
Kysha, thank you so much for your time, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.